Welcome back to JV Sports Podcast. Today is Tuesday, November 18th, and we are back for another pod. It is Solo Tuesday. You got me, Joe, sitting here doing it by myself today. Jace will not be here. Couldn't make it work out when it comes to our schedules, but the pod still moves on. So you're going to have me sitting here rambling on about college football, NFL, and I won't say everything in between because I really don't have a lot outside of football because there's so much to already talk about. And the more I add on to this whole thing, the worse not the worse, but the longer it'll get. I'm trying to not be a 2.5 hour long podcast when I'm sitting here by myself, just talking to a computer screen. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just stick with college football, which I'm going to do the recaps of this past weekend's games. And then you're going to go into the college football playoff rankings that are going to come out here in the next 10, 15 minutes or so based on when I'm recording this. And then go and transition from there with news and stuff, obviously. And then I'm going to transition from there to the NFL, where I'll do NFL news and stuff. And then I'll do the recaps for all of the, week 11 NFL games that happened this past Sunday and Monday night. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into things so I don't ramble on too long here. So let's start with college football. I just want to go through the games that I saw this past weekend. There were some decent ones for sure that I just kind of want to get to, talk about, give reactions to, and all of that. So let's go ahead and get to it. Week 12 of college football, by the way, if I didn't necessarily say what it was before. All right, so let's go with Friday night, couple games that happened. Really, they're in the grand scheme of things, they don't really matter because of how they worked out, but they still happen. I want to make sure to have at least a few thoughts on them. Minnesota going to number 8 Oregon. That game happened on Friday night. I think it was a 9:00 game. Oregon won the game 42-13. The game wasn't close. Oregon controlled it from start to finish, and they did what they had to do. And again, Oregon's in a spot here is as long as they win out the rest of their games, they will be in the playoff. They will have an opportunity to make the run that this year that they did not have a chance to do last year with them running into Ohio State so early on in their playoff run. And again, coming off of the two prior games for Oregon where they kind of struggled with the other two, like they struggled with with Iowa and with who was it before that? They struggled to beat Iowa, and Wisconsin wasn't necessarily the most clean of games either. So the idea they came out against Minnesota, who is not a powerhouse or like a great team, but a good college football team in the Big Ten. The fact they were able to come out, start the game, and kind of just dominate from start to finish was a very good thing to see. Especially with them not having all of their pass catchers, obviously. I think they're missing Decoria Moore, their number 1 pass catcher, and they're saying he has an injury that may keep him out for most of the regular season, if not the whole rest of the season that they have left. But they're keeping some hope alive that he may be able to come back if they make it farther into the playoff, like into the semis or the championship game, that he would have a chance to come back. But as of right now, he's going to be gone. But they don't need all of that to beat a team like Minnesota. They have a very good running game. Dante Moore is a very good quarterback. And then with all the tight ends that they have as pass catchers and the other guys they have at the wide receiver and running back positions, this should be more than enough for them to beat a team like Minnesota. But if they do, Oregon face up against a team of equal or better talent, that I do think it'll be a little bit more of a problem with Oregon, with not having all of their more explosive guys on their offensive side of the ball. Other game I want to talk about, Clemson at Louisville. Clemson wins the game 20-19, and honestly, Louisville is not really a team that's looked at as like a team that can get into the playoff at all, especially now that they're 7-3. But I wanted to mention this game because Clemson Tigers, with that win, they are 5-5, and they need to have their next 2 games. They have at Furman, which they should win that game without much of an issue. So that takes away my whole argument here. I was sitting there, I was about to make the claim that we could see a season where a Dabo-led Clemson team doesn't even make a bowl game. And unfortunately, because they have a team like Furman that they have to play this upcoming weekend, they don't have to worry about missing a bowl because they're going to get to that sixth win without much of an issue. How does the ACC get away with this too? Having these like cupcake games, even worse than cupcake. I don't even know what the word is to describe these games. They literally bring in FCS schools to come in and play in the middle of November. Absolutely insane. But they're going to get their sixth win. They're going to make a bowl game, unfortunately. But I would have loved to have the opportunity to see them try to like get through the rest of their schedule, and try to get to a bowl game. Would have been very fun to see that happen. But heck, now that I think about it, this Louisville game would have been a nice little feather in the cap in my whole quest to see Dabo fail at everything he does if they would have lost this game. So unfortunately, my dreams can't come true. I guess I have to keep hope on Ohio State doing what they have to do so I don't have to revel in Clemson's destruction to make myself feel happy. All right. On to the Saturday games. Let's go through this. I don't want to take too long on anything, but if it happens, it happens. UCLA at Ohio State. Ohio State won the game 48-10. This game was not close. The bigger stories coming out of this game was the health of the wide receivers Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. Carnell having a second game in a row where he did not play. Everybody was questioning, hey, what about this injury? Is going to be gone long term? Because everybody, at least Ohio State fans, have it in their brain that this is a potential JSN situation. And by that, I mean JSN in his last year at Ohio State. I think this is about 3 or 4 years ago now. JSN got an injury where I think it was like a hamstring injury or something like that, and he got injured early on in the season. They tried to bring him back for like the Iowa game or something like that, and he injured it again, and then it ended up being an injury where he was out for the rest of the year, and we really didn't get to see him play his last season at Ohio State. And that was made a bigger deal because Ohio State is very mum on injuries. So with Ohio State not talking about players having injuries and all that, it leaves room up for interpretation. And when it comes to any type of social media and everything like that, if there is something up for interpretation, somebody's going to take that opportunity to create a story and make it a bigger deal than it is. And heck, a lot of people were saying during the JSN thing was that JSN opted out for the rest of the season and that he just didn't want to play anymore. So like that was the reason why he didn't play at all this season, that his last season at Ohio State. When that really wasn't the case, he had an injury and then they tried to bring him back and he made it worse. But the thing is that when Ohio State is when they play all these injuries so coy, any type of the speculation that can come up is looked at as a potential option because Ohio State is not going to tell the truth or at least shed some light on how things are going. And now you're coming to what the injuries are now. You have Carnell Tate, who has been dealing with the injury. I think it's like some type of soft tissue injury where he hasn't played the last 2 weeks. But Ryan Day has said, hey, he should be able to come back this season, but they're not giving much more information than that. And heck, it was one little guy on X that came out in the middle of the night that didn't have any type of following or reporting experience that came out and like just all he had to do was tweet that he was hearing that Carnell Tate was opting out for the rest of the season, and it sent Ohio State fans into a frenzy. And then you come into this UCLA game, Jeremiah Smith shows up on the injury report being questionable for the game, and then that even turns Ohio State fans up to a crazy level. And he starts the game, he plays like half the game, and then you see video of him like during the second half or at the end of the game walking off the field gingerly, kind of limping around. Ohio State fans are then freaking out saying, oh, why did Jeremiah play at all if he was injured? So I just think I get it. Ohio State has to play Michigan, not this upcoming weekend, but the weekend after. And Ohio State fans want to see that losing streak fall, on top of the fact that want to see them go to the playoff and try to make another run at winning another national title. So people are freaking out. The emotions are getting really high for Ohio State fans. The way I look at it is as long as you have Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith playing in that Michigan game, it doesn't matter. And any type of minutia or details doesn't actually matter. And from everything Ryan Day has said, and he has not said a lot, he has maintained that Ohio State to Ohio State fans that Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate should be ready to play by the Michigan game. Will it actually work out that way? I don't know. But I just think that to think it's going to go down like the JSN situation did is going to imply that Ohio State and Ryan Day did not learn from that situation at all. And I just don't think that's going to be the case, on top of the fact that JSN still has to beat Ohio State for another season. So I don't think the Jeremiah Smith thing is much to worry about, because when he was out there and he was warm and he prepared to play, he did not look all that altered. He did not have the same burst a little bit, but all in all, he looked like Jeremiah Smith, maybe without some of the crazy explosiveness that Ohio State fans used to seeing. If he's nicked up, he's nicked up. There's nothing you can change about that. But I do think he will be ready by the time Michigan plays. If anything, I think he won't play this week, and then he'll be ready by the time it's time to go play the team up north. Carnell Tate, I think he might play a little bit this coming week against Rutgers. But again, little to if nothing, and then have him be able to play against Michigan is the main thing, because that's all that matters, because Ohio State doesn't need those guys to go beat Rutgers. It may be nice. It may be nice to see them go out there and do their thing and be the aliens that they are. But I don't think that those two are the difference between Ohio State winning and losing against a not very good Rutgers football team. All right. But other than that, Julian Sand played well. It was a little bit of a struggle there in the middle of the game, because he's dealing with a lot of very young wide receivers. So he has to kind of take the reins on those young guys that haven't played a lot of football. So it was not computer-like dominance like it had been in the weeks before. Obviously all season, when he's had both Carnell and Jeremiah out there. So that was a little bit of a struggle, but Ohio State ran the football very well against UCLA, and that was the biggest deal, because if there's anything Ohio State has been kind of like the dragon that Ohio State's been trying to slay this season, is trying to get their running game in order, into where they can be a little more explosive, be able to count on the run a little bit more. Again, the fastball is always going to be Ohio State throwing the football, Julian saying to Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. But if you could just have the running game be a good complement to what they do passing the football, it makes this Ohio State team unstoppable. And in this game against UCLA, again, the UCLA team that's not a great football team, they're not really all that good. But I will say that Ohio State was able to get the running game kind of going. I think they ran the football for over 250 yards or something like that. Bo Jackson went off for over 100 yards by himself. So with all of that being the case, I think Ohio State has a lot of things to look forward to, on top of the fact they play Rutgers this week, another team that doesn't defend the run well. So I do think Ohio State can get a little bit into a rhythm running the football around, on top of the fact that Julian Sand can get another week, maybe with the younger receivers, kind of get more used to them. And then hopefully by the time it's time for Team Up North week, we'll have everybody ready to go, and we'll be able to go out there and smack Michigan and make everything right in the world, honestly. So that's about it for Ohio State. Let's go on to the next thing here. Indiana beats Wisconsin 31-7. Finally, another Indiana was going on a run there where they've been struggling with some of the teams they've been facing as of recently. Penn State, I think they also struggled up against, who's the other team? Why am I forgetting their whole thing now? Penn State, they struggled against and barely beat, and then they also struggled against not Maryland. No, it was just Penn State. Okay, fine. So they struggled against Penn State. They came back and had a much more, would say, dominant performance against Wisconsin, but the game was tied 7-7 at halftime. But again, that being tied at halftime doesn't really matter. It's how you finish the game, and Indiana finished off the game very well, scoring those unanswered points in the second half to be able to have a little more comfortable of a victory that they needed. Another team that did not have a comfortable victory at all. South Carolina going to number 3 Texas A&M. A&M won the game 31-30. And they won that game 31-30 after they had been a 30-3 deficit at halftime. So in the first half, it was all dominated by South Carolina. They were able to run the football, throw the football all over the place, and Texas A&M could not stop South Carolina's offense whatsoever. On top of the fact that South Carolina, I think, also had forced how many turnovers out of Texas A&M? I think in that first half, I think Marcel Reed had 2 picks, and I think there was a fumble as well. So there's a few picks and there's a fumble, and there was a real case that Marcel Reed should have thrown even more picks, but the South Carolina defenders just did not get a hand on them to be able to track them in. But this was like kind of the game of the day, to be totally honest with you, because you go through that first half and South Carolina is dominating, and there's a lot of people out there. It's like, oh, Texas A&M finally has their moment, which the moment is for Texas A&M over the last 20 years or so, is that they'll be a good team and then they'll kind of like break down in November and it'll kind of ruin their season based on everything that they build upon. But in this game, first half doesn't go well. South Carolina is absolutely dominating, and it felt like South Carolina just like, I'm not going to say was overconfident in the second half, but it just felt like everything just turned on its head in the second half, where A&M dominated. Marcel Reed played a lot better. I think in the first half he had like 100 yards passing, and then in the second half he threw for like over 300 yards. I think threw 3 touchdown passes. Like, he absolutely dominated in that second half in general. And then they were able to run the football a tad bit more effectively. They weren't dominant running the football, but they were able to, like, they scored touchdowns in like 3 or 4 straight possessions. So it was a tale of two halves to the utmost degree, right? And coming out of this game, this is another one where 2 weeks in a row, you have Indiana 2 weeks ago where they came out and they played like trash against Penn State. And then Fernando Mendoza and the offense kind of put it together at the end of the game to kind of come back and win the game, which gave everybody so much. I'm not going to say gave everybody, but it kind of lended itself to people starting to feel like, not bad, but like it gave everybody the feels when it comes to having a Heisman moment, because Fernando Mendoza threw that ball and it was a great play by the wide receiver, catching on the back of the pylon and gets his foot down in order to win that game. And you have this game this past weekend with Texas A&M to where everything was going terrible. It looked like their season was about to be thrown into absolute chaos because of a loss to a South Carolina team that I think only has like 3 wins on the year. And Texas A&M kind of says, no, we're going to come back. We're going to win this game. Marcel Reed plays awesome. And now after this game, everybody's going crazy about Marcel Reed and how he's a Heisman. He should be the Heisman front runner, and he's so good. And it's another game where Texas A&M digs their own hole, and then including Marcel Reed, because he had a bunch of picks and turnover-worthy plays in that first half, and then he digs himself out in the second half and plays very good ball. And now everybody's talking about how awesome Marcel Reed is and how, the struggle, and he makes it out of it, so it makes it that much better, and that's his Heisman moment. And it's 2 weeks in a row where a different player has had a moment where he has, not just a moment, but a game where they have managed to dig their own hole that they kind of go into. And then in the second half, they kind of have to come out of it and like dig their way out. And they do it. And now everybody's going crazy talking about Heisman moments when you're comparing that to a guy like Julian, or if you're going to bring in Jeremiah in this situation where it's everybody, again, narrative-wise, Ohio State doesn't have to struggle because they haven't played anybody. But these teams that Penn State, that Indiana and Texas A&M have beat to make these Heisman moments, they're not good football teams. But people are going to give these teams credit as if they're beating a top 10 school, and that's not what's happening. And it's going to, I think it's just narratively, people like to move the goalposts when it comes to what they think is a great game and like all of the struggle and all of that. When at the same time, if Ohio State did that same exact thing against a lowly team in the Big Ten, nobody would think anything of Ohio State because they'd be like, Ohio State shouldn't struggle with that team. If Ohio State did what A&M and Indiana did over the last 2 weeks with UCLA, everybody would be like, what's wrong with Ohio State? And nobody wants to take that same type of stance with Indiana and A&M. They want to talk about how they're battle tested now. And I was, again, as I was talking to Jace last week, it's just like a moving of the goalposts when it comes to Ohio State. Nobody wants to. It's like it's intellectually dishonest because if you really want to have a conversation with anybody in the media when it comes to Ohio State, it's all about Ohio State isn't challenged. But then you're talking about these other teams where they're in these games where they should not be challenged, either talent-wise or as a football team, and they make it hard on themselves, and they manage to pull out the win. Good on them, but I just don't think you can give them a bunch of credit for making their own struggle and then getting out of it. I just, it just sucks that people just can't be honest about Ohio State and give Ohio State their flowers when they absolutely deserve it. I don't know. I don't want to go too far, but, and I've been talking about this long enough, but I don't know. Just last 2 weeks, these two games with Indiana and A&M have just annoyed the F out of me, to be totally honest with you, because it's just like Ohio State can't do anything else. Like, they're doing what they have to do, and yet it's not enough. And it annoys the crap out of me as an Ohio State fan. Okay, next game, number 11 Oklahoma going to number 4 Alabama. Oklahoma wins that game 23-21. And to be totally honest with you, that this was a tale. Alabama should have won this game. In all major categories, Alabama was the better football team, except for one. And that one category was turnovers. Ty Simpson, I think, threw 2 turnovers, threw 2 picks, I believe. He had the 1 pick, and then he also had... Did he have a fumble as well? Hold on, let me check. I don't want to go insane here. So Ty Simpson had the pick that he threw. That was a very bad pick, and then he also had a fumble. And then Ryan Williams also had a fumble. So there was 3 turnovers that Alabama had given to Oklahoma, and that was the difference because it set Oklahoma up on short fields. They were able to score, take advantage of those moments, because when it comes to yardage, right, Ty Simpson threw the football for over 300 yards to John Mateer only throwing the ball for 138. Running the football is pretty even because Alabama can't run the football at all, and Oklahoma really struggled with it as well. They both ran the ball for around 70 to 80 yards. But the difference, Alabama outgained Oklahoma by 3-1. So it was an absolute, everything was slanted towards Alabama except for the turnovers, and those were enough because John Mateer did not turn the football over, even though he didn't throw the football all that effectively. He didn't make the terrible mistake that set Alabama up with short fields like Alabama did for Oklahoma. And that on top of the fact that Oklahoma had an absolutely amazing field goal kicker. He was hitting, I think he hit 3 different 50-yarders in this game, and he was absolutely awesome. That was a weapon that Oklahoma was able to use in this game that allowed them to win, because if they didn't get those field goals, especially in that second half, they weren't winning this football game. But they did, and they got the turnovers from Alabama, and they didn't have the bad turnovers. And that was a difference. And it's another year in a row where Alabama looks like everything's going in their favor, and then they have a loss to Oklahoma that kind of throws everything into question about them. And again, at least this time, it won't kind of set Alabama up to be outside of the playoff, where they still have an opportunity to get into the SEC championship game. So Alabama still has everything in front of them when it comes to what their end of the season goals are after losing this game. But it's just everything that people were setting Alabama up to be throughout this season, ever since their very bad loss to Florida State in the first game, is now turned on its head because of a loss to Oklahoma that they shouldn't have lost. The fact they struggled as much as they did against this Oklahoma team is absolutely baffling to most people that watch football. Bama's the better football team. They are, and if they played this game again, Bama would be favored to win the game without much of an issue, especially on a neutral field. Bama would be a 6 to 7 point favorite in this game. So I just think that it's just another year in a row where Kalen DeBoer leading this Alabama team is losing games they probably shouldn't. And it just kind of tells itself to be hey, how many more of these can you take before the heat really starts rising on Kalen DeBoer as the coach at Alabama, only in his second year? Because Alabama has a very high standard, a lot like Ohio State and places like that, especially coming off of Nick Saban. Like I was saying before Kalen DeBoer got hired, is that do you want to be the guy after the guy, right? Because all you're going to do is be compared to the guy that came before you. And when it comes to Nick Saban and the standard that he set, that's an impossible standard to meet. And that's all Alabama fans are going to be looking for because that's what they're used to. And that's what they were accustomed to with Alabama at the helm, with Nick Saban at the helm in Alabama. And Kalen DeBoer is not going to reach it. And heck, if anything, I think he's kind of underachieved with what he's had there in the first 2 seasons. So, I don't know. And does this change my mind about what Oklahoma could be? I just don't think so. If Oklahoma's not able to force turnovers, they are not going to win anywhere close to these football games with talent equated, if not talent teams that have the more, like the talent edge in those games, because John Mateer has not been good enough. Again, he didn't have the turnovers in this game, and he did it that way, but he's not going to be a guy that's going to like shoot his way out of a situation where they're going to have to go band for band, or they're going to have to score back and forth with another team. That's not what Oklahoma is. And if they can't do that, and the defense for Oklahoma is not necessarily all that dominant, like their defense has not been even close to what everybody thought it would be coming into the year. Like they're good. It's a good defense, but it's not like dominating, right? So if all that's being the case, like if they play this game, like I said, they play this game against Alabama once again, and Alabama doesn't have those turnovers, Bama blows out Oklahoma without much of an issue. But that's the thing about how the games goes, that they actually have to be played. And on that day, Oklahoma made less mistakes than Alabama. So you have to give credit to Oklahoma, but I'm just not going to sit here and claim like Oklahoma's like a dangerous team or anything like that when it comes to winning a title. I just don't think they're going to be. I think Bama is still a better team and probably a more capable team to go win a championship. But it's just, if they keep playing like that in big games that they have, it's just going to be like they're not going to be able to be anywhere close to the dreams they probably set for themselves before the season started. On top of the fact that freaking, why am I forgetting his name? Ryan Williams, wide receiver. Everybody wants to keep comparing him to Jeremiah Smith. Can we get off of that now, please? He had a very good first year, but he has been nothing close to that this season, and he has kind of fallen off the face of the earth for the most part in this Alabama offense. He might be the 3rd best receiver on his own team. So I just don't want to see anybody compare him to Jeremiah Smith at all for the rest of the time that they're in college, because not only they have the rest of this season, but they have another season after this. So I just don't want to hear any type of comparisons between him and Jeremiah. I just don't. So let's just make sure we nip that one in the bud, because Jeremiah has more than paced Ryan Williams without much of an issue. So I just don't want to hear any more comparisons between those two. Next game. Number 10 Texas going to number 5 Georgia. Georgia absolutely waxes Texas 35-10. This game was not close. Georgia is the better football team. They're the more physical football team. They're better on both lines of scrimmage. Arch played fine. Again, he didn't necessarily suck in this game. He didn't. He had 251 yards total passing. He did have a touchdown and a pick, but it's just not efficient enough. Like if Texas was going to win this game, they would have to do it with Arch Manning playing his best ball, and he did not do that in this game. He wasn't the reason they lost it, but he wasn't the reason they were going to win either. And I feel like Texas is a team that they need a quarterback that can do a little bit more, and Arch does not seem to be the guy that can do that as of yet. But on top of that, Texas defense didn't play all that great. They haven't been really playing great all season. They've kind of been way less than what everybody thought Texas' defense would be coming into the season. Georgia came out and they dominated, man. Gunnar Stockton, 24-29 for 4 touchdowns and 1 pick. Georgia didn't run the football that well, but they haven't been running the football that well all season, so I'm not going to get too down on them on that. And Georgia just kept finding ways to score points, man, especially in that fourth quarter. They scored 21 points to really run away with the game, and Texas had no chance to kind of come back. So, like, all that being the case, I just think the same weaknesses on this Texas football team have kind of shown itself to be the case over the last couple of years, and I think that's something Steve Sarkisian, as the head coach of that Texas team, is going to have to fix or have to answer for, because with all the talent that Texas has, there's no reason why they should be getting beat up on the lines of scrimmages like they are in these big games that they have against these teams, against Georgia, against Ohio State. Like, they're getting beat straight up. And then, but with the type of recruiting that Texas does, it should not look like this, especially how it has looked this year. Again, it was a close loss to Ohio State, but if Texas played Ohio State again with what Julian Sand looks like now, I think Ohio State would do very similar things to what Georgia just did to Texas. And I think that's a problem, at least for Texas fans. I'm more than happy to see Texas keep losing football games. Don't get me twisted on that. So I'm not going to sit here and cry for Texas at all. But I do think if you're a Texas fan, you're probably underwhelmed with how this team has looked over the last 2 seasons, especially against some of the bigger teams that they have faced. So, and credit to Georgia, though. Everybody's saying that they might have hit their stride where they're playing their best football at the right time. But I just think at the same time that, can you really trust that Georgia offense to be like this every week? I just don't think so. And I do think they just took advantage of a Texas team that is not nearly as good as what everybody thought they would be coming into the year. So I'm not going to sit here and claim that Georgia's the scariest team now, because I just think I think it's between them and Georgia and Texas A&M to be the best teams in the SEC. But even still, I think Georgia has an Alabama problem. If they face Alabama in the SEC championship game, that would definitely be an issue for them. And I wonder what Georgia would look like against a much more high-powered offense. And heck, if they faced a better defense, how that Georgia team would look, because their offense has not been consistent all year long. So, great win for Georgia. But it's just another referendum on what Texas has been over the last couple of years, which is not tough, not great, the line of scrimmage. And I just think it's just more of the same for how this Texas team has looked in these big games. So that's about it on that. Next game, let's see. Texas Tech beat UCF 48-9. It was a rout. Texas Tech keeps doing what they have to do. Florida going to Ole Miss. This game was a very close one. I called it before the game. When I was doing the preview for it, I called it the Lane Kiffin Bowl because of the teams. Obviously, Lane Kiffin is the coach at Ole Miss, and the 2 teams that are looking for his services to be their next head coach are Florida and LSU. And I think Florida's been making a little bit more noise about being the real potential suitor for him to kind of go coach there. And Florida came out and they played a pretty decent game, and the Mississippi State Ole Miss won the game 34-24. It was a close one. It took Mississippi State to kind of come out and have those 14 points in the fourth quarter to really get the job done. It took a couple of defensive stops that Ole Miss was able to get. But Florida's not a great football team. They're not, but they're a very talented team. And Ole Miss managed to get out of that game without falling in the trap. And you have to give Ole Miss credit on that. But I do think that it just opens up a big range of possibilities, because Florida's looking for Lane to be their coach. So will they wait for him? Especially if he ends up making the playoff and all that. That really does take Florida out when it comes to getting a recruiting class for this upcoming for this signing day, which is a week or two away. And then the transfer portal as well. I think it really locks them out for both if they wait on Lane Kiffin to be their head coach. And they kind of sit in limbo until then. But it's just, Ole Miss is doing what they have to do. Florida took another loss. And I do think you have to give Ole Miss some credit, as at least their defense is getting a few stops along the way that they would not have gotten in years past. Because their defense is not, I think their defense is probably not as good as it even was last year. But I think they are being a little more opportunistic and getting a few stops they need to win these football games. And as long as Ole Miss is able to put things together and Lane Kiffin is doing his thing, kind of putting things together for the offense, I do think Ole Miss can be a very tough out for a lot of teams they would have to face in the playoff. So that's all I got on that. Notre Dame, Pittsburgh. This is a ranked-on-ranked matchup. Number 9, Notre Dame going to number 22, Pittsburgh. Notre Dame won the game 37-15 when Pittsburgh's head coach came out before this game and said, this game doesn't matter. We could lose this game 100-10, and as this game would not matter to us. Apparently, the team listened. And I'm not even going to sit here and say that they took a fall on the game, but I will say that there was one team that obviously wanted to win and that had the burning desire to, and it was Notre Dame. And they came out. They were great. Jeremiah Love just keeps making Heisman-like plays. I'm not sure if he'll win the Heisman, but he definitely will be invited to New York to get to have his shine a little bit, even if he doesn't win the award. But Notre Dame is they're hitting their stride right now. They're running the football very well. I do question if this Notre Dame can do what they're doing now against better competition, because think about it, the best best two teams they faced all season long, Texas A&M and Miami early on in the year, they lost pretty handily to them. They were close losses, but you can tell that they weren't the better football team. So what happens when Notre Dame does have to go face some of the better teams in college football, and like their running game won't be as effective, and they'll have to rely on their young quarterback a lot more, and their defense won't be able to get as many stops because their defense is not nowhere near as good as it was last season. It's a fine defense, but it's not like locked down like it was last year. So, but again, Notre Dame keeps, again, when we talked about the losses that they took earlier on this year, everybody made the claim that they would have to go undefeated the rest of the year for them to get into the playoff, and that's exactly what they have done. And as long as they win these next couple games that they have left, I think they have Syracuse and Stanford, and they should win those games without much of an issue. As long as they win those games, they will be in the playoff without much of an issue. But if somehow they manage to take an L in one of those, they will be kicked out of the playoff without much of an issue, and I think nobody will be complaining for them. Next game, let me take a drink here. Next game, Georgia Tech going to Boston College. Georgia Tech won the game. They're the 16th ranked team. They're like the team in the ACC that if they won out the rest of their games, they would be like the team with the best resume to go and be the ACC representative. But the problem with Georgia Tech is they just do not know how to play a dominating football game where they take care of their business from start to finish without needing a comeback or any type of magic to happen. And again, this game against Boston College, they won the game 36-34. And this BC team, they play hard, but they're not a good football team by any stretch of the imagination. I think they have like they have one win on the year. So the fact that Georgia Tech needed a comeback effort in order to beat this Boston College team is a definite issue. And I just don't think I think Georgia Tech's playing, I don't want to say playing with their food because it implies that they're better and they need to be playing better. I think it's more Georgia Tech just doesn't know how to take care of business from start to finish. And I just think when they go up against a better team than them, it's going to be an issue. So as much as I think that they're like probably the best ACC team that could still get into the playoff, at least when it comes to their resume, because I still think Miami's probably a better team. But it's just the fact that Miami is stupid and doesn't know how to win those games they definitely need to win. So like that is a problem on their end. But Georgia Tech has been taking care of business all year long. It just does not inspire confidence the way they're doing it. Next game, number 21 Iowa going to number 17 USC. USC wins the game 26-21. They take care of business. They run the football effectively. They throw it effectively. They do what they have to do. Again, it was a comeback effort needed on USC's part. I think they were down at one point. Let me see here. Hold on. Let me see. Scoring plays. So they were down 21-10 at the end of the 21-10 at halftime. And then in the second half is where USC kind of had to dominate to come back and win this game. But again, this is a game where USC usually like curls up and dies and they take this L against the Iowa team because things weren't going their way. This game was in USC, but the rain followed. There was a lot of rain. The weather wasn't great. And this is a game where USC would definitely crawl in a bowl and die and not do what they need to do to finish off to come back and win the game. So credit to USC for coming out and doing what they have to do, especially in that second half. But it does show like Iowa ran the ball pretty effectively against this USC team. And Iowa's a very solid football team, but they're not looked at as like a very talented team. They don't really have a lot of great pass catchers or a quarterback. Gronowski, their quarterback, is fine, but he's not necessarily like the most like lethal passer out there. So the idea that USC kind of got behind against this Iowa team is in a way, like on one hand, not surprising at all because, you know, this is what Iowa's a bad matchup for a team like USC. So my question is once USC goes up against better teams that can run the football more effectively and have a lot more talent across the board, Will USC be able to put up an effort like that in the first half and then still be able to come back and have a chance to win it? Is my big question for that USC team. But they get the credit for winning this game against Iowa because, like I said, in the past, they would just get blown out and the game wouldn't be close at all. But I do think this kind of does lend itself to be like, oh, but if they see a better team in the playoff that can run at them a little bit more, I just don't see it going all that much better. So, credit to USC, though. Iowa gave it a very good football game. I think Iowa just knows how to play these very close games, and they know how to stay in the games altogether. And you have to give them credit for that. But again, they just weren't able to win because USC is the better football team. So you have to give USC the credit for that. Next game, number 18, Michigan going to Northwestern. Michigan won the game 24-22. They had to come back in this game because I think they were down. Hold on, let me see. Make sure I'm not crazy here. So there was a point where they were down because they were up at halftime. Halftime, they were up 7-6. And then in that third quarter, they kind of came and dominated, and they were up 21-9. But they allowed Northwestern in that fourth quarter to have two scores, score two touchdowns, and they were up. So and Michigan had to come back at the end of the game to get the field goal to win. This Michigan team is not great. Like, they're not. Northwestern's not a bad football team at all. I think they're a very solid team. They're not very talented, but they are well coached, and they go out there and they play very good ball. And their wide receivers made some very big plays to kind of get them back into the game and have a chance for them to win it. But when Michigan really started to apply some pressure on Northwestern, they weren't able to hold on. But again, this was a struggle for Michigan to get to this point because Bryce Underwood, 21-32 for 280 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 picks. And it's just very obvious that Michigan and Sharon Moore does not want to let Bryce Underwood have to make some real decisions when he's running this offense, because every time they give him an opportunity to make a decision to have to go out there and make a play, he's throwing picks and he's throwing the football all over the place and all of that. So I just feel like their passing game is very limited, not only because of what they have at the wide receiver positions where it's not all that great, but again, even with the offensive struggles that they had Andrew Marsh, the freshman receiver that they got. I think he's from California. He had 12 receptions, 189 yards. So they do have a receiver that has some talent, but it's just they just don't have a great passing offense in general. And then every time they kind of give Bryce Underwood the chance to really like take the reins and like make some of his own decisions, he doesn't make the right decision a lot of times, and a lot of times he's going to put the ball in harm's way. And heck, even sometimes he'll throw a football all over the place that doesn't look as accurate and is like not exactly where it needs to go. So when I look at this game and like look at how this translates against a team like Ohio State, who Michigan is going to have to face here in a couple weeks, it makes me feel very good as an Ohio State fan. I just think that even though Bryce Underwood is a much better talent than what they have had in the past at quarterback, probably other than J.J. McCarthy over the last few years, like I think that Ohio State should be able to beat this Michigan team. And I do think that Michigan, like, their defense isn't nearly as good as it has been over the last few years. And I just think all of that and Michigan is a team at 8-2. They should have 2 more losses than what they have right now. But the thing is that they kind of like I think I heard somebody talk about them in this way, is they're kind of like a cockroach. Like every time you think you step on them, they keep coming back. And I do think that if you leave Michigan in to kind of leave them in the game to try to think they have a shot to win it, they will put up a valiant effort. Even though they're not a great football team, they don't have the best talent out there, I do think that they know how to stay in football games to kind of keep their way in it. So if you're going to beat them, you have to knock them out, and you have to make sure that they don't feel any type of chance to win the football game like Northwestern couldn't do. Northwestern could not cut the head off the snake and make sure that Michigan had no shot. They left the door open and Michigan took it. And again, Northwestern's not a great football team. I think if Ohio State was in the same situation, I think Ohio State would blow Michigan out. This game would not be close. Again, Ohio State will have their chance to prove it in 2 weeks. But I just think that with the way Michigan has looked over the last few weeks, they've definitely been struggling. And I have to acknowledge that. And I do also have to say that Ohio State has a Michigan problem, and this all could be mute because Ryan Day poops down his leg and things don't go well. Like they haven't gone well the last couple of years. But as long as Ryan Day has learned his lesson, which I do think he has, I think that this Michigan team is nowhere near as good as it's been in years past. And again, they weren't all that good last year. But I think with Ryan Day's new kind of philosophy and how he's been coaching this team, I think that it should not be much of an issue once this game does come up here in 2 weeks. Let's see. Let me run through any other ones that I saw. Virginia beat Duke. They took care of business. They're another ACC team that is looking to try to get into the playoff. I think they won at 34-17. This game wasn't all that close. Let's see. Any other games that I have to talk about? Penn State beat Michigan State 28-10. Penn State finally faced off against a Power 5 team and won the football game. A lot of credit to them. They went out there and did their thing. Michigan State's not a great football team at all. Again, I hate to say that because I've been betting Michigan State on their over when it comes to their win totals, and they're not going to get even close to the 6 games that I need them to win in order to get my win on that bet. But, Penn State went out there against Michigan State, dominated defensively, scored enough points to go out there and win that game. All credit to them because they need a win. Because I think they were at 6 straight losses this season. So, and I think Michigan State was on a similar losing streak. So credit to Penn State for being the team to make it out of this one with a W instead of an L. Any other games I really needed to talk about here? I don't think I have anything else that I really had to talk about. Boom, boom, boom. Vatech, Florida State, not really. But Vatech, I do have to mention them. Because the news came out, I think today or yesterday, that Virginia Tech has come to an agreement on James Franklin becoming their next head football coach. Good for them. Because when I look at James Franklin, all my problem with him was that anybody ever thought that he was going to be able to lead that Penn State team to prominence, not prominence, but to a championship, because he had done everything else. When he got Penn State, they were not necessarily a dominant team when it comes to in college football like they kind of are now, but he spent 12 years there. He beat Ohio State once, but it did get to a point where he recruited well enough and he had Penn State at a spot where every year they were one of the top 3 teams in the Big Ten, and he did what he had to do. Again, he didn't beat Ohio State all that much outside of one game throughout his tenure there, and he didn't beat Michigan all that much either. So, against the best teams in this conference, he wasn't able to get the job done. And I think the only problem with that was that Penn State every year was kind of like the Cowboys and thought they really did have a chance when they didn't. And after he got fired, I was, I'm not going to sit here and say I was happy he's gone, because I do think it was very comforting with the idea that he would be the coach of that team and not be able to get over the hump like he has not been able to for most of his tenure as a head coach at Penn State. So, but him going to Vatech, I think, is a very good coaching job for him. I'm not sure why he was so quick to jump back into it, especially with him being able to get the buyout that I think he was owed $50 million. I think the buyout that he negotiated with Penn State was only for $9 million. So he was very ready to go and take another challenge at being a head coach in college football. And he picked Vatech to be the place. Again, it's a good spot for him because he can go to a place a school that is in the ACC. So there's not a lot. There is no Ohio State or Michigan or Oregon in the ACC. There isn't. There isn't that caliber of team there. So as long as he can go there and keep doing what he was doing at Penn State, recruit that area very well, because at Penn State, that was the area that he recruited at best. And he was able to he's a very good recruiter. So if he can go do the same things at Virginia Tech that he was doing at Penn State, maybe to a little bit lesser of a degree, because Vatech just does not have the same type of resources that a team like a school like Penn State does. Again, they're making the move of saying hey, we're going to put a lot of money in this program. We're going to do what we have to do. We're going to be good in NIL. But I just think at the end of the day, they're not going to have the same resources as a place like Penn State. But if he can do the same things there that he was doing while he was at Penn State, I do think he can have a team every year that would have a chance to be one of the better teams in the ACC. And hence have a chance to get into a playoff every year for him. And I think that it'll be a little bit less pressure filled because at Va-Tech, if he could just get them back to being a relevant football team on a year in, year out basis, they will treat him as a god there. They really will. And I don't think they'll ever look at him and say, hey, when you're going to win a national championship, because that's just not what Virginia Tech is as a program. I think Penn State, I don't think Penn State is either. I really don't. I don't think they're a program that should be looking at anybody saying we should be winning a national championship, because that's just not the type of program that Penn State is for their football program. But it's just like, again, James Franklin was good enough to get them to that point where they were starting to ask that question. So that is a credit to him that he was able to get Penn State to that point to where they started questioning him to like, hey, why haven't you won a championship yet? Because Penn State's not that type of program. At least I don't think so. They're a top 20 program. They are for sure. But are they that team, that blue chip team that should be like having dreams of a national championship every year? I just don't think they're that. But I think if James Franklin goes to Va-Tech and does what he needs to do, I think he will have that team in real prominence. I really do think he'll have them winning football games every year. They'll be a great team to watch, and I think they'll be very competitive. And I feel like that's something that Va-Tech has been like literally starving for over the last 5-10 years or so. Let's see. Outside of that, was there any other news stories I had to talk about with this? I don't think so. Dion is still dealing with his medical issues, but he still claims he wants to be the coach there, so that is good for them. Let's see. Talked about that. Oh, Michigan running back Justice Haynes, their number one guy throughout the season. I think that he's going to be gone for the rest of the season with a foot injury, because I think they said he had some type of surgery, and that there was a little bit of murmurs that he had a chance to come back for the Ohio State game, but the news has come out that he will not be ready for that game, and that, let's see, he may be able to come back if they make a playoff run, but outside of that, he's not going to be able to play for them. So that's one thing, especially as an Ohio State fan. I'm more than happy to not see Justice Haynes be able to go out there and play. But that's about it on the stories that there are. Let's see, the rankings. Let's go ahead and I think they've come out by now. So let's go ahead and read them real quick and see what they are. So for the rankings that came out just tonight, over like 45 minutes ago, Ohio State's number 1, Indiana's number 2. No, it's AP. Haha. Hold on. Playoff rankings. That's what I needed. All right. CFP rankings. Ohio State's 1. Indiana's at 2. Texas A&M's at 3. Bama's at 4. Georgia's at 5. So the top 5 remain unchanged. Texas Tech is up 2 spots to number 6. Ole Miss took a 1 spot drop from 6 to 7. They are at 7. Ole Miss is. Oregon takes a jump 1 spot to 8. Notre Dame takes a one spot bump to 9. Texas, did they move up a spot? Hold on. Wait a minute. Is that last week's rankings? I think that's last week's rankings. Hold on. Let me see here. Top 25 reveal. Oh, see, I messed up. So that was last week's rankings. Hold on. About to say, why is Texas still at 10 after they just lost again? Hold on, let me see here. Let me see if I can get those rankings back. Rankings, CFP rankings. Okay, I have the right rankings now. All right. Let's go back and do this again. That's AP. See, I was about to do it again. That sucks. Hold on. CFP rankings. Am I nutso? It should already be out by now, right? Hold on here. when did that ranking show come out? Is the real question to me, because that's the whole reason I say I started recording so late was because I wanted to be able to make sure that I was able to talk about the rankings on the show, at least on the pod. Let me a second here. Let's see here. Oh, literally the rankings that just started. That's insane. All right, so you're getting a little bit of a live reaction here. Let's see here. Sorry, I hate all the dead space, but, for whatever reason they changed the time that they were doing the rankings. I probably should have checked. That's on me. I should have checked a lot better. Hold on. Hopefully I'll be able to get you this. Okay, so 25, you got Arizona State. Number 24, you got Tulane. Number 23 is Houston. Number 22 is Missouri. Number 21 is Illinois. All of those teams are inside the top 25 for the first time because they were not ranked last week. Number 20, you have Tennessee. I'm not sure how they took another jump up 3 spots. I don't understand. Tennessee's not a great football team. Their best wins are awful. I don't know how they are still in the top 25. I just don't get it. Number 20 is Tennessee. Number 19 is Virginia. Number 18 is Michigan. They stay unchanged. Number 17, the first big change, Texas. They take a 7-spot tumble from where they were at pick 10. At number 10 last week before they lost to Georgia. You have Georgia Tech at number 16. Their spot remains unchanged from what it was last week. You have number 15, you have USC, who takes a 2-spot jump. 14, you have Vanderbilt. You have number 13, you have Miami, who takes a 2-spot jump. Again, I think the committee is setting up Miami to get into the playoff at some point. I really do. Because I don't think Miami is really a shot to get into the ACC championship game because both of their losses were in conference. But, again, they're just setting them up. If any team above them starts falling and not looking good, I think Miami's one of the first teams that are going to jump up into being in the top 12 and getting into the playoffs still. I'm not sure how I feel about it because Miami's a good enough, they're a talented enough team to be in the playoff. But I just think to a certain degree, you have to get the dummy tax for losing the games that they lost at the times that they lost them. So I don't know. It sucks that they're being set up this way to kind of get in without really earning it. But, it is what it is. Number 12, you have Utah, who takes a 1-spot jump. You have BYU, who takes a 1-spot jump to number 11. So they're still ranked inside the top 12. You have Bama, who took a 6-spot tumble, going from number 4 to number 10. Let's see here. So if they're at 10, you're looking at boom. So I'm going to take a guess here that based off the rest of the rankings, the top 4 will be Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, and then Georgia. And then I have a feeling you're going to get to Texas Tech, Ole Miss, Oregon, Notre Dame. And then you're going to have the Alabamas of the world, if I had to say. So Notre Dame's at 9. They're still their spot remains unchanged at 8-2. And then, sorry, I know this is taking way too long, but this is what happens when things are happening as I'm doing them. So number 8, Oklahoma took a 3-spot jump to 8. Oh, I don't know. Are they a top 8 team in all college football? I don't like that at all. Again, they're 8-2, and they have wins against Michigan, and now they have a win against Alabama. That sucks. I don't think Oklahoma's a top 10 team. I really don't. They have a loss to Texas, and they have a loss to Ole Miss. But the only problem is that because of their resume, they have a win against number 4 Alabama. Well, now number 10 Alabama. They have a win against Tennessee, which for some reason is still inside the top 25. But again, that's like I've said before, they're more of like a rankings boost to all the teams they have lost to throughout their schedule. And they also have a win against Michigan as well, who's still in the top 20. So that's why they're at number 8, even though I don't think they're a top 8 football team. You have number 7 you have is Oregon. You have number 6, it'll be Ole Miss. And then you're going to have 5 is going to be Texas Tech. Number 4 is going to be Georgia. Number 3 is going to be A&M. Number 2 is going to be, obviously, Indiana. And then you're going to have number 1 being Ohio State still, which I think that's how this is going to work out. Sorry, all they have is up to 6 now, so I was making a nice little guess as to how the rest of it would go. So, number 6 being Ole Miss. Number 5 is Texas Tech, like I said. Taking a one-spot jump. I don't know why saying one-spot jump is like screwing with me so much. Come on, give me the top 4 now. Come on. They take way too long doing these rankings, man. I'm not going to lie, they do. I should have just, I would have just waited if I knew how this was going to work out. But we're here. Number 4 is Georgia. All I need is number 3, and then it'll make it very obvious as to who's 2 and 1. I don't think they're going to move Ohio State. Nothing Ohio State's done has proven they should be out of the number 1 spot. The question is are they going to give Texas A&M the jump over Indiana? So they're not. So Texas A&M's at number 3, Indiana's at 2, and Ohio State's at 1. All right, that's the rankings there. I think my main issues when it came to that is Oklahoma, even though we can't do anything to stop that because of where they're at. I just don't think they're a top 8 team, but because of the teams they have beat so far in their season, you have to give them that respect to kind of have them up in there, even though I just don't think Oklahoma's that great of a football team. And then you have, I did not like that at all. I was cool with the Bama tumble. They deserve to be dropped that much. Texas deserved to be dropped that much. But yeah, I think the biggest problem for me was that Oklahoma team being in the top 8 now. Because again, I get it. It's just kind of how the rankings have gone. But I just don't think Oklahoma deserves to be ranked that high. I just don't. But it is what it is. Let's go ahead and get on with our dates here and keep going because we're already at an hour. I don't want to spend another hour on the NFL stuff. So let's go ahead and get out of this thing and go on to the next thing. So that's it for college football. We did all of my reactions from this past weekend's games. And then I did the reaction to the college football playoff rankings, which, as jumbled up mess as they were, because I was kind of doing them live as they were releasing them on ESPN. I think I did okay at it. It's my fault. I should have timed it out a little bit better, make sure I checked when the rankings are going to come out. I just assumed it was going to be 8 o'clock like it always is, but it did not turn out to be the case tonight. So that's on me. As a podcaster, I did not do a great job at that. But hopefully it was good enough for you to understand and get a decent idea of what I was talking about, but who knows. All right, let's go ahead and get on to the NFL stuff. Talk about all the games this past week. Talk about stories and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and get to everything else. So there's no story that I needed to talk about right away. So let's go ahead and just get into the games. And then as little stories here or there come up, I will talk about them. So let's go. First game, Washington at Miami. This was the 9:30 in the morning game when they were playing in Spain. I feel really bad for that Spain crowd to have to go watch this game against two very not good football teams. Miami won the game 16-13 in overtime. This game was an offensive slugfest. Both of these teams were not all that great. Devon Achane was awesome, though. I think he had like 120 yards rushing. I think he had like another 50 yards receiving in this game. He was absolutely awesome. But outside of him, there was not a lot of great football being played throughout this game. And it was just nasty, dirty. I'm just like, it was not good football. These are two teams that are 3-8 and 4-7 on the season as of right now. They're not good football teams. They don't have all their guys. Obviously, Marcus Mariota being the starter for Washington, nobody's expecting him to go out and play like Jaden Daniels, and he wasn't going to. That's not what he is right now in his career. Mariota, 20 of 30, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, did not play all that great. These were two not good football teams going out and playing each other, and somebody had to win, so Miami kind of took control in the overtime and got the job done. But Devon Achane was absolutely awesome, though. Like, he was the best player on that field by far. And Tua did not play great, but he didn't make the bad mistake that lost him the game, so credit to him for doing that. But it's just the writing's on the wall there. I just don't think he's going to be their long-term answer in Miami. And it's just a shame that they gave him all the money that they did, because it was obvious from the get-go that it was never going to work. And it just sucks how that has gone. Next game, Carolina at Atlanta. Carolina won the game 30-27 in overtime. Bryce Young may have had his best game as a pro. And again, I'm not going to sit here and say that Bryce Young. I just don't think Bryce Young is a. Because I don't want to be mean. I don't think Bryce Young is one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't think he is one of the best 32 that you could have out there playing in the NFL right now. He's not. But as of this game against Atlanta, he played his best game as a pro. He went 31 of 45 for 448 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. Rico Dowdle had a great game. He had 45 yards off 19 carries. It wasn't very efficient at all. And then he also had 5 catches for 55 yards. Tet McMillan had an awesome game. 8 receptions, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Xavier Legette, 4 catches, 83 yards, and a touchdown. Carolina just played a very good game, and they were helped by the fact that on the other side, Atlanta was not nearly as efficient offensively as they probably needed to be. Bijan Robinson had a great game, 23 carries, 104 yards, 2 touchdowns when it comes to rushing the football. And then he also had 4 catches for 39 yards. Drake London was great in this game, 7 catches, 119 yards, 0 touchdowns. But the real story coming out of this game was Michael Penix. He went 13 of 16 for 175 yards and then got hurt and then was not able to finish this game. Kirk Cousins had to come in. And let me tell you, he did not look good at football whatsoever. And again, maybe he will look better as he gets more and more starting reps throughout the rest of this year, because Michael Penix will be out for the rest of the year. I think the news is that he has another knee injury that will hold him out for the rest of the year. He had to get surgery on. And I think this is out of the last 4 or 5 seasons, this is the 3rd or 4th time he has ended a season on a knee injury. So this is not great news for Michael Penix Jr. or the Falcons, who put a lot of time and draft capital into him being their next quarterback. And it's just, again, these knee issues were a thing. Everybody knew about them coming out of college and coming into the NFL. Atlanta took that chance. They felt like he was going to be their guy. He's been struggling over the last few weeks. And then now it's capped off with him having this knee injury, and he's going to be gone for the rest of the year. I don't know, man. The more of these injuries he keeps getting on those knees, he's not going to get any better. And it's just, they're going to have to make a decision quite quickly as to if they really want to ride this Michael Penix Jr. stuff out, or if they're going to try to get another plan in at quarterback. I just don't know. When they use the draft capital that they did on Michael Penix, I feel like they're locked in to a certain degree, but I also feel like as of recently, NFL teams have been just as bold when it comes to getting off of a guy quickly they don't believe is going to be their quarterback and just going with a different plan, even with the high draft picks that they use. So I don't know. It's a question they're going to have to answer. This is a team that I thought in Atlanta was going to be a lot better when I was looking at them before the season started. And they've just been struggling, man. They've been struggling defensively. Offensively, Michael Penix has not been all that great. Bijan Robinson has been awesome, but he had a few games there when he wasn't outputting at the same level as he probably usually is. And it just has not been consistent at all, and it's not being helped by the fact that Penix is now out for the rest of the year with another injury. So now he's going to come into next year coming off an injury, and he just doesn't have a lot of starts under his belt, man. He didn't really start last year up until the last couple of games, and then he starts for most of this season. But he hasn't had a full season's worth of starts yet in his first 2 years. So I just don't know how. It's going to be a real question for Atlanta what their future is going to be because of the injuries, because of his play before the injury even happened. It wasn't going all that well. So I don't know. It's just going to be a real saga to see how Atlanta deals with the situation from here on because, again, Bijan's awesome. They have Drake London has been absolutely awesome. Like, they have dudes on this football team. And the guys that they draft, the defensive ends they drafted in the draft last year, they've been coming up and playing a very good football as well, and their defense has come along. They're not great, but from what they were at the start of the season to what they are right now, they are playing better, and they're getting after the quarterback a lot more. Like, if they just had a quarterback that they can believe in, that can run their offense, like, they have a bunch of talent. Like, that's a very talented football team. So that Michael Penix issue is definitely going to be one they're going to have to answer, and it's going to be hard when he's not going to be playing for them over the rest of this season, and who knows how long it's going to be into next season before he'll be able to play again. So who knows? Next game, Tampa Bay went to Buffalo. Buffalo won the game 44-32. This game was a absolute barn burner. It was a back and forth in a good way. This was a back and forth affair. Josh Allen really did come up with like a vintage Josh Allen performance in more ways than one. Josh Allen, 19 of 30, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks. Again, the picks is something that is a little bit more of an old Josh Allen thing, whereas as great as he is, the picks were a big issue for him earlier on in his career, and then he kind of got into like a 2 or 3 year span where he kind of like stopped the picks altogether and he wasn't throwing the football to the other team as much. But in this game, he had a couple interceptions. But the thing is that when he was explosive, was as dominant as he was in every other facet of the game in this one, it's very hard to like say that he was a problem in this game, because on top of the 3 touchdowns passing that he also had 3 rushing touchdowns, 6 carries, 40 yards rushing, and 3 touchdowns. Like, so when Josh Allen is accounting for 6 touchdowns by himself, those 2 picks don't look to be as important. But again, this is a game where they did pull away in the end to make the game look a lot more comfortable than what it was. But this was a close game for most of it, man. And it just took Buffalo to kind of score some points at the end of the game to really pull away. But Josh Allen was awesome. James Cook, they haven't been able to run the football with him all that effectively over the last few weeks, and that has been a real problem for them. 16 carries, 48 yards for James Cook. Again, Josh Allen adding his rushing totals definitely helps. They had about 100 yards rushing total in this game. But the problem is that just can the Bills rely on Josh Allen to play like this every week for them to win football games against the better teams in the NFL is going to be a question that, like, I just don't think that you can rely on him like this. Again, every once in a while for sure. And I'm not saying that like he's an old man, but it's just this level of this type of output from one guy is just very hard to expect from one quarterback week in and week out, because the NFL is just that good, and it's just going to be very hard to expect that out of him. But it's just, that's what they need to win football games right now. And that's what he did on Sunday against this Tampa Bay team. And again, this Tampa Bay team isn't even at full strength. They're still without Bucky Irving. They're still without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So, like, they're without a lot of guys on that football team, and this game was still a back-and-forth affair. And here's the other issue with Buffalo, is that they can't stop the run at all. And what makes this even more apparent is that the leading rusher for Tampa Bay was Sean Tucker. I think it was an undrafted guy from Syracuse. He had 19 carries, 106 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And on top of that, he also had another 34 yards receiving and a touchdown as well, off 2 catches. So, like, this Sean Tucker dude, a dude that's not really looked at as an NFL guy, he burnt Buffalo's defense to a crisp. Also on top of that, Rachaad White had 51 yards rushing. Baker Mayfield ran for 39 yards off 5 carries and a touchdown. As a total for the team, they had over 200 yards rushing against the Buffalo defense. And this is the thing. Everybody knows that this is one of Buffalo's Achilles heels, is that they cannot stop the run whatsoever. And Tampa Bay was able to take advantage of that. But again, were they able to win the football game? No. But that was because Josh Allen put a Superman effort out there. So what happens if Josh Allen has a normal football game for what he has been over the last couple of years? They probably get blown out. But it's just Josh Allen tapped into a different level of play that not many people or quarterbacks can even attain. But credit to Buffalo, they got the win. They're 7-3. They're in a good spot. I think they're a game behind. Yeah, they're a game behind New England right now for the lead of the AFC East. Sorry, so they're a game behind New England, and again, will they be able to get back that number one spot in the AFC East? Is going to be a question they're going to have to answer. I think they played New England here in like 3 or 4 weeks now. So that's going to be something they're going to have to do. They're going to have to overtake them and beat them in that game, but also win more games by the end of the season. So, but again, it's just Josh Allen played awesome, man. And if he didn't, they weren't going to win this football game, but he did. So you have to give him credit for that. Also, one more thing I wanted to get to before we get to the next game was the receivers for Buffalo. In this game, they had to... why am I forgetting his name? And I hate that Jace isn't here because he would be the guy having a freaking mariachi band while I'm talking about this because he was on this earlier than anybody. Why am I forgetting the wide receiver's name that they drafted? Hold on. He's the year 2 guy out of Florida State. I'm forgetting his name. Keon Coleman. Guy they drafted a couple years ago. He was a healthy scratch because he was missing practice or something like that for them. And I think there were some players after the game that was talking about him not being mature enough and not doing the right things. And it's just like one of those things where like they drafted him to be their eventual number one guy, and has not been that throughout his NFL career so far. And now that he's making mistakes like that, just kind of like shows that he's kind of in the doghouse right now for that Buffalo team. And they're a team that does not have a bunch of like great weapons to deal with. Like a lot of their tight ends that they have that they rely upon, they are hurt right now. And they came to this game, Tyrell Shavers was their leading receiver. 4 catches, 90 yards, and a touchdown. James Cook also had a good day receiving. He had 3 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown. Ty Johnson had a 61 yards receiving and a touchdown off 2 catches. But like Gabe Davis, the guy they brought back off of free agency, 3 catches, 40 yards. Dawson Knox had a catch. Curtis Samuel had a couple catches. Like they just don't have a number one guy that like, hey, I gotta have it. Like this is the guy I can go to like get me that play. They don't have it. It's Josh Allen dependent, and so like I said, if James Cook isn't doing what he needs to do, they are a one-man band in Josh Allen. They really are. And that's just a lot of strain to put on one quarterback. And again, Josh Allen is a very good guy, a very good quarterback. And I think more often than not, he will be able to put up efforts like this, but it's just that output is just very hard to predict, and it's very hard to rely upon on a week-in, week-out basis. And even if Kansas City is not in the picture anymore, it's like somebody has to be there to take the reins, and I just don't think that defense for Buffalo is good enough for them to win a championship right now. So if Josh Allen isn't like playing lights out and playing like that, I just don't think they have a chance to really go all the way and win a championship like they're looking for. I just don't think so. Next game, Houston at Tennessee. Houston wins the game 16-13. This was a defensive struggle for the most part. Houston's defense played very well. Cam Moore did come alive in this game and kind of play some better football. He went 24-37 for a touchdown. He also had 33 yards rushing off 3 carries. Again, this game, Houston's offense can be up and down. It's like sometimes they'll look great, sometimes not. They do have Davis Mills. This is the second week in a row that they're without C.J. Stroud with a concussion, and he's not going to be with the Texans for their next game on Thursday night against Buffalo. So that's a problem they have to deal with. Davis Mills didn't play terribly, though, 26-41 for 274 yards and a touchdown. Houston cannot run the football at all. They just really can't. Like, it's fine at times, but their offense is really best when they're throwing the football around, and Davis Mills, as much as I think he's a good backup, he's not C.J. Stroud. But in this game against Tennessee, a team that's 1-9 on the football season, Nico Collins played great, 9 catches, 92 yards. Jaden Higgins, 4 catches, 55. Dalton Schultz had 6 catches for 51. So Houston won this game. Great defense, even though they did struggle in that second half to hold on when Tennessee was kind of getting hot there in the third and fourth quarters, especially in that fourth quarter getting that touchdown to make it close. But Houston's defense makes enough plays to win this football game. Houston doesn't mess it up offensively. And they got the win. Credit to them. And they're just kind of trying to hold on. They're 5-5 on the year. They're trying to claw their way back into being in the playoff picture. They're not quite there yet. I think if you had to rank them, I think they're like 9th so far, 8th or 9th in the potential playoff rankings right now. So like they do have some ground they need to make up, and it's going to be very hard when they have to go face Buffalo this Thursday without C.J. Stroud. So I think that might be almost an auto loss, even though that defense for Houston is awesome. And I do think they'll put up a very good fight. I just don't think that fight will be enough throughout a full game to stop Josh Allen from being able to score some points. Where it'll be a hard game for them for sure this Thursday. But they got the win against Tennessee. Good for them. They're just, again, 5-5. They're trying to claw their way back into getting into playoff relevancy. And it's just very hard without CJ. He's like, this is about to be his 3rd week in a row without him playing, and they have managed to get 2 wins in a row without him. So you do have to give him a little credit for that. Next game, Chicago at Minnesota. Chicago wins the game 19-17. This is another game where Chicago has pulled the rabbit out of a hat. They look like they're going to lose. I think Minnesota got a touchdown drive with how much time left? Hold on, let me see here. With like 50 seconds left, Minnesota was able to get their touchdown. It was a 15-yard touchdown pass from J.J. McCarthy to Jordan Addison to get the lead from 17-16, and then Chicago gets the ball back. Was it with that last 50 seconds or so, and was able to get down the field enough to get to the field goal point, able to hit the field goal to win the football game. I think this is like the 4th or 5th win in a row for Chicago. Hold on, let me see here. 3rd win in a row. A little bit of a winning streak here. All the games have been close. It has been really comeback wins over the last 3 weeks. Again, Caleb playing fine. 193 yards, 16 of 32. Not very efficient, not very explosive, but he's been doing enough. He hasn't been throwing picks. That has probably been his best attribute, is that he's not giving the football to the other team. They are running the football very well. DeAndre Swift being their best back, had 90 yards off 21 carries. Cole Kmet was a leading receiver, playing very well, but it's just the difference in this game was J.J. McCarthy having a few interceptions, man. In big spells in this game, he was awful. He had the one drive at the end where they were able to put something together offensively in order for them to have a chance to win the football game. But outside of that, J.J. McCarthy's a straight-up mess at the quarterback position. Let me give you his stats for the game. 16 of 32 for 150 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. And again, his stats was not much different than what Caleb Williams was, but the difference is that Caleb did not throw the 2 interceptions. And here's also the other thing, is that Caleb, even though I do think he has a talented squad around him of guys that can catch the football, he doesn't have a Jay Jettas. He does not have a Jay Jettas being Justin Jefferson. He does not have a Jordan Addison. And he is able to kind of go out there and not make the mistakes in order to lose a football game. And J.J. McCarthy does have those type of weapons, and he's struggling. It has not looked good all season. And again, he's in his 5th or 6th start on the year. He did get hurt there in the middle, so I'm not like he still has time to get better, but it's just for what the draft pick they used on him being the number 10 draft pick, I just don't think it has looked nearly as good as they would like it to look. And you can tell that the wide receivers are getting very frustrated by that, especially Justin Jefferson, man. He's used to being that dude and being able to win football games. Heck, especially when last year they were a lot more successful with Sam Darnold. And guess what Sam Darnold's doing in Seattle right now? Again, he had his worst game the other day, so we will talk about that. But Sam Darnold was so much better. And they let him walk to go to Seattle and to then let their young quarterback play. And he has not looked like he's been improving at all. So it's a very weird time in Minnesota with that quarterback position, with J.J. McCarthy not playing as well as he probably he needs to, especially with those weapons. It should not be this big of a struggle throwing the football around, but it is what it is on that. But credit to Chicago, another 3rd week in a row that they had a comeback win. So you have to give Caleb the credit for not turning the football over, making the plays when necessary. When it was time to go win the football game, he makes enough plays to go do that. So you have to give him credit for that, for sure. Next game, Green Bay going to New York. Green Bay won the game 27-20. This was a back and forth affair. Jameis Winston got his first start in a Giants uniform, and Jameis Winston gave you the absolute full, all-encompassing Jameis Winston experience. Jameis, 19 to 29, 200 yards, 0 touchdowns, and a pick. He also had 3 carries, 10 yards, and a touchdown when it comes to rushing the football. They ran the football well, the Giants did. They had over 140 yards rushing between Tyrone Tracy, Devin Singletary, and Jameis. And it was just that pick. He made a couple mistakes here or there that, cannot kind of, especially with that pick being at the end of the game where the Giants were trying to come back and score the touchdown to win it. And in the middle of this game for the Packers, Jordan Love got hurt in the middle of the game, had to leave the game. Malik Willis came in and had to throw a touchdown pass for them. And Jordan Love came back, was able to play out the rest of the game. He didn't play great, 13 to 24. Not great. He made a couple big plays, especially that one touchdown throw he had to Christian Watson on the right side. He threw that one crazy touchdown catch for Christian Watson, was absolutely awesome. Christian Watson had 2 touchdowns in this game. But Jordan Love had that very big play, but he wasn't the best. Again, he left with an injury, so I'm not going to sit here and say Jordan Love played terribly. But he did what he needed to do to win the football game. Again, you're helped when Jameis Winston was making the Jameis Winston mistake he always does. Green Bay lost Josh Jacobs in this game. He had a knee injury. They said it's going to be week to week, but they're not sure when he's going to be able to come back. It's not a long-term injury type of thing, but they did lose him in this game, so that's going to be a loss for them here over the next couple weeks. Emmanuel Wilson was the guy that kind of took over in Josh Jacobs' stead. He had 11 carries, 40 yards, and a touchdown. And like I said about Christian Watson, he had the 2 touchdown catches. Romeo Doubs, 4 catches, 53 yards. Savion Williams had a big catch in the middle of that game. You have to give him credit for. So it's just Green Bay did enough to win this football game again against a bad Giants football team, especially led by Jameis. There's going to be a lot of mistakes. He's going to help you out when it comes to having to play him in a game. He's going to give you plenty of opportunities to go out there and win the football game by him making mistakes. So credit to him. Credit to the Green Bay for getting that win. But, not without its challenges for sure. Next game, Cincinnati going to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh won the game 34-12. Aaron Rodgers got hurt in this game. I think he had a left wrist injury. I think they said he partially broke his wrist or something cracked his wrist. They're saying he does not need surgery. It's going to be a little bit of an injury scare. He's trying to play this upcoming Sunday, so who knows if that's going to happen. But he did not play the whole second half. And then you had... Why am I forgetting? Mason Rudolph had to come in and finish off the game. But by that point, Mason Rudolph was he did not have to do a lot. He went 12 of 16 for 127 yards and a touchdown. He didn't have to do a lot. The defense for Pittsburgh was already kind of well in hand of dominating this game. I think they had 2 pick sixes in this game, I think. Am I nuts on that? No, it was 2 pick sixes, right? Play-by-play, scoring plays. Sorry, it was a fumble recovery for a touchdown. I think there was also a pick 6. Kyle Duggar had a pick 6. So 2 defensive turnovers turned into touchdowns was more than enough to kind of give Pittsburgh the cushion that they needed to win this football game without much of an issue. Joe Flacco did not play great. 23 of 40, 199 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. That pick being a pick 6. They ran the football fine. 18 carries, 99 yards for Chase Brown. Jamar Chase did not do anything in this game. Was absolutely awesome to see as a Steeler fan, of course. Watching them not give up a bunch of yards to Jamar Chase was fine. He only had 3 catches for 30 yards. T. Higgins did his thing, though. 3 catches, 63 yards, and a touchdown. Noah Fant also got involved. Chase Brown had 6 catches on the game. But it was just a Pittsburgh Steelers dominated the full game, especially defensively. Got after Joe Flacco. They only had 1 sack on it, but they did make him feel some pressure. Got a couple turnovers, and it definitely helped out this Steelers team in general. Like I said, Mason Rudolph came in relief of Aaron Rodgers and played well. They ran the football pretty effectively. Jalen Warren, 62 yards total rushing. Kenneth Gainwell got involved with 24 yards and 9 carries. Caleb Johnson came in, had a couple runs. Kenneth Gainwell was like the main guy offensively in this game, though. He had 7 catches, 81 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Darnell Washington, if you haven't seen the Darnell Washington play that he made in that Bengals game, go see it. It's an absolute treat. He runs over like 3 dudes on the one play on like a 30-yard reception that he had. He had 4 receptions, 67 yards. DK Metcalf, 5 catches, 49 yards. It was nice to be able to see the Steelers' defense and offense going out there and winning the game on all facets. The defense made a huge adjustment, played very well. And credit to them, man. My biggest issue with the Steelers is that were they going to be able to face off against a potent attack led by Joe Flacco and be able to win the football game? They did. They did, for sure. They got the turnovers. They were able to win this football game without much of an issue. But again, does this make me feel different about what the rest of the season will be for Pittsburgh? Probably not. No, not even probably. It for sure doesn't change how I think the Steelers team is really going to end this football season. But, again, I have to feel happy that they did their job for one Sunday, and I don't have to end it being depressed about how the Steelers can't beat a very bad Bengals team. And I do have to talk about the one story that everybody's been talking about over the last couple of days since this game happened. There was one play in I think it was the fourth quarter or something like that, sometime in the second half, where there was a fight between, it was Jamar Chase and Jalen Ramsey going at it pretty much all game long, talking trash back and forth and all that. It came to a head where there was a point where, while watching it, you didn't see what happens. All you see is Jalen Ramsey throwing a punch, grabbing Jamar Chase's face mask and pulling on it. It's a whole thing. Jalen Ramsey gets thrown out of the game for throwing a punch, and everybody's like, what's happening, right? And as I'm watching, I'm like, what are we doing here, right? We're trying to win a football game. Again, the Steelers were ahead. It wasn't really going to change anything, but it's just not something you need, right? And Jalen Ramsey was visibly upset, and he's like, what's going, why am I getting kicked out? He was saying something about how, what Jamar Chase did, and everybody was like, okay, fine, it's Jalen Ramsey being Jalen Ramsey. And then as the news comes out over the next couple hours, you get video feed of Jamar Chase spitting on Jalen Ramsey. They're face to face, and then all you see is them talking trash back and forth. And next thing you see is Jamar Chase spitting on him, and that's what got the reaction out of Jalen Ramsey to go ahead and start throwing a punch and grabbing his face mask and all of that. And they asked him, as the video was coming out, and then after the game, they asked Jalen Ramsey what happened. And he said straight up right away, he's like, Jamar Chase spit on me. And he said, once that happens, I don't care about the football game whatsoever. We got to fight because you just don't do that. And that's a universally, everybody knows you don't spit on somebody. That's the lowest, one of the worst things you could do to another human being that doesn't involve hurting them. And it's saying that the human being is worse than the ground. That's something you just don't spit on anybody, especially in football. In any form of life, you don't spit on anybody. And that happened, and so Jalen Ramsey did all that. He said that it happened, and then you have the same media going to Jamar Chase and saying, hey, did you spit on him? And Jamar Chase denied it, vehemently denied it, saying, I never opened my mouth to that man, and that I never spit on him. But here's the problem, is that he has to know there's cameras everywhere, right? And if you don't think about all the NFL cameras out there, but guess what? Everybody on that field that's not a football player has a goddamn cell phone. And what do you see? The clip that comes out of him is with somebody with a cell phone on the sideline taking a video of it. It was like a media person taking a video of the whole interaction. You could see Jamar Chase spitting on him. So it was not a great look from Jamar Chase. I have a lot of respect for him as a player, but it just sucks that he had to go. I get it. Again, it was a struggling game. He only had 3 catches. I get it. A lot of things were not going his way in that football game, but you never want him to kind of result to doing that. Spitting on people is just not the way to go. So coming out of that game, the news is that he did get suspended for a game for spitting. Again, I think it's something the NFL has kind of said, hey, we're not going to tolerate this. So that is one thing. But my biggest question about this is how did Jamar Chase expect this to go? There's no way expected for it not to get caught by somebody. And then he had his opportunity in front of the media right after the game to own up to it, and he didn't. And he straight up lied to everybody's faces. So I don't know. It's just weird, the fact that he decided to lie, because he, like I said, it's very obvious that everybody has a phone out there. And there is a camera that's going to catch you. So I just don't know how Jamar Chase really expected that to go. But, you know, he's going to get his suspension. He won't be able to play with them next week when they go and face the Patriots. So he's going to get his punishment for doing it. And I feel good that Jalen Ramsey, you know, did not just go off and start hauling up, try to hit somebody without being provoked. So, you know, it is what it is on that. Next game, LA Chargers getting destroyed by Jacksonville. LA went to Jacksonville. They lost the game 35-6. This game was not close. Jacksonville dominated the Chargers from start to finish. Trevor Lawrence didn't even play great. He had 153 yards total passing, 14-22, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Let's see. The Jags did run the football for over 100, close to 200 yards in this game, so that really was a difference. Bashal Tutin, 15 carries, 74 yards and a touchdown. Travis Etienne, 19 carries, 73 yards and 2 touchdowns. Trevor Lawrence had a touchdown run, but that was the biggest difference on this game. Chargers did not do anything. Justin Herbert, 10 of 18, 81 yards and a pick. He did not play great in this football game. He did not play good in this football game whatsoever. Chargers in general did not play well. Like, they just came out and they laid an absolute egg against this Jacksonville Jaguars team. And it just goes to show, man, as good as the Chargers looked earlier on this year, that things have kind of crumbled. Again, they have been missing a few guys. Amarian Hampton's not playing with them right now. Heck, they lost 2 of their starting running backs this season. But it's just their defense has not been great. Their offense has not been consistent. Justin Herbert has not been consistent. Like, everything has been kind of going to crap for this Chargers team. And it's culminating by having them getting blown out by a Jacksonville team that really, does anybody believe Jacksonville is like a real team in the NFL? Probably not. They have a good record. They're a talented football team, but nobody believes that Jacksonville is going to go on and run in the playoffs. So the fact that the Chargers lost the way they did to Jacksonville just was not a great look. Next game, Seattle going to the LA Rams. Rams won the game 21-19. This game was a defensive struggle in general. Sam Darnold did not have a great day. He had 29 of 44 for 279 yards, so that's good. But he had 4 picks. And I'm not talking about picks like normal, like the ball was knocked out of his hand. Like, these were absolute, like, this was like the old Sam Darnold type of picks, man. Like, he did not have a good game whatsoever. The interceptions he threw were not great. Like, just hints of the old Sam Darnold came out. And I've been a guy throughout this season that has applauded Sam Darnold and how good he has looked throughout this year. But he had that game that makes you question a little bit. Not going to lie, he did not have a good game whatsoever. They were helped by the fact that Kenneth Walker had a great game running the football, 67 yards and a touchdown. JSN came out and did what he had to do, 105 yards off 9 catches. But it's just the defense for the Rams was absolutely awesome in this game. And Matthew Stafford made the plays he needed to win the football game. He was not all that great. Matthew Stafford, 15 of 28, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. Those 2 touchdowns were huge for getting them where they did. Kyron Williams had a touchdown run. He had like 91 yards and a touchdown off 12 carries. Puka Nacua, 75 yards off 7 catches. Devontae Smith, I think only had 1 catch and like under 5 yards, something like that. But that catch was for a touchdown. He had 1 catch for 1 yard and a touchdown. Again, it's all you need, Devontae Adams. So good for him. But Puka Nacua did great. Tyler Higbee came out, made a catch. But like, this was not. This is 2 teams where even though the offenses struggled, the defenses were absolutely awesome. I do have to give the Seattle credit that their defense is absolutely insane. They have a bunch of dudes all over it. And that they did make the game very hard on the Rams to kind of go out there and do the thing. If the Rams played any other team in the NFL and they had 5 turnovers forced on that team, the Rams would win the game by 30. So the fact that they were able to get 4 turnovers out of Sam Darnold and they only won the game by 2 points is a credit to how good the Seattle defense is. And I think that's all it is, because the offense for Seattle was not all that great. But again, even with all those turnovers, they were still a field goal away from winning it. And they did have the chance for that field goal. And they got to the point where they got into field goal range, and I want to make sure I got the Jason Myers just missed the field goal, like that last field goal there. So still, even with all those turnovers, Seattle had a chance to win the football game. I do think both of these teams are probably top 5 teams in the NFL with how they're playing right now, especially with those defenses playing the way that they are. And again, can you expect the offense for the Rams to play that terribly? No, but I also think it's because how good to Seattle's defense is that even happened. But I think both of these teams are probably like two of some of the best teams in the NFL, and it was a very, unlike the Washington-Miami game where both teams were terrible and not a lot of points were scored, this game was a defensive struggle because the defenses are awesome. So I do have to give Seattle and LA for a lot of credit for having a really good football game. Sam Darnold, I just hope that is not this game where he has 4 interceptions, is not a game that kind of like leads to a spiral in him to where he starts playing like the old Sam Darnold for the rest of the season. I just hope that's not the case, because I just think he's been awesome throughout all of this year, and it's just like I just don't want that game to be, it starts a trend for the rest of the season. I just don't want that to happen because they've just been so good. And I do like watching Seattle play there. It's a fun football team to watch. Next one, San Fran going to Arizona. San Fran won the game 41-22. This game was an absolute thumping from the start to finish. I think literally the first play of the game, San Fran had a kickoff return of like 99 yards. And literally they got that very quick first touchdown, and then it was like they were just running away with the game from there. It just got to a point where Arizona didn't even have a chance to even blink, and they were down like 2 touchdowns. So I don't know. It's just one of those. San Fran's just a lot better football team, even though I think their defense, they just don't have a lot of dudes defensively. But it's just when the offense with Brock Purdy back plays as well as it did. Brock Purdy back for his first game in a while, coming off the toe injury, 19-26, 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like he played exactly how we needed to. Christian McCaffrey, 13 carries, 81 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then he also had another 5 catches for 40 yards and a touchdown. George Kittle, 6 catches, 67 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Juwan Jennings had 50-something yards off 4 catches. So, the fact that San Fran was able to play so dominantly offensively with Brock Purdy back, and they were just kind of they were able to get back to form so quickly in Purdy's first game back, Arizona had no chance to win that football game, and it just showed. Even though I don't think this is like a precursor to what San Fran will look like the rest of the year, because their defense is so injured, I just don't think against some of the better teams in the NFC that they'll be able to really go and win like they have been in years past. But against Arizona, their offense came to play. Purdy looked very good in that game. Next game, Baltimore going to Cleveland. Baltimore won the game 23-16. Dylan Gabriel got knocked out for Cleveland in this game, and Shedeur Sanders had to come in. It did not look great. And the going narrative is, what have they done to Shedeur Sanders? This isn't fair for him. He did not look good in the football game. He gets no snaps. This is all Cleveland's fault. And I'm just like, that narrative of everybody being so protective of Shedeur Sanders is a little bit annoying to me. And again, maybe I just sit on the outside looking in on this because I never thought Shedeur Sanders was an NFL quarterback to begin with. And again, there's a lot of people out there that thinks he's an NFL guy, and he was a Heisman candidate in college, and everybody loves Dion as his father and everything. But it's just, I just think that he was never going to be an NFL guy to begin with. But there are a lot of people that think that he is, and that he needs to be giving it an opportunity, and everybody's been singing, praying for Shedeur Sanders to be there to get an opportunity to play earlier on this year. But Cleveland does not think so. They've been throwing Dylan Gabriel out there, and then he finally got hurt. Shedeur Sanders had to come out, and he had a couple flashes where he made a couple plays, but overall did not look great. And now everybody wants to blame Cleveland for making him look bad. And I'm just like, I just think there's room for, I get it. Everybody loves Shedeur Sanders. I get it. But I just think that at the end of the day, I keep telling, every time we've had Jace has been on and we've been talking about it, he's like, I think he's been convinced that the Stefanski and the rest of that coaching staff are so against having Shedeur play that they're willing to risk their jobs. I'm just not there. With where that coaching staff and that upper management is like, if they really had any idea that Shedeur Sanders was going to be a better option and win them football games, they would have thrown him out there by now. I truly believe that. And again, it's not outside the realm of possibilities that they're that against Shedeur that they are willing to risk their own jobs. But I think at the end of the day, these coaches are going to cover their own ass before they do anything else. So if there was a chance that Shedeur was going to be the guy and then he's going to be able to win them football games, I have a pretty decent thought that they would have thrown him out there by now to do so, because at the end of the day, they don't want to be without jobs. The coaches don't. So to anybody out there that just wants to blame Cleveland and say, oh, Shedeur is like the victim in this situation, I just don't think that's the case. I think he got drafted in the 7th round, 6th or 7th round. I'm not sure where he got drafted, but 6th or 7th round. And he was drafted to be a backup, and that's what he is this year. And he got his opportunity to but come in a football game, and it didn't look great. Maybe he'll be able to play over the next couple weeks and get better and play some better football. But just let's just stop making Shedeur a victim. If this was happening to anybody else, nobody would have a problem. So I just don't like the whole making him a victim in this situation. I just don't get it. It doesn't make any sense to me. But getting away from the Browns, outside of the fact that freaking, as much as I'm a Myles Garrett hater, I really am. I'm not a hater. I'm not a fan of Myles Garrett as a person, but as a football player, I have to admit he is absolutely insane. He had 4 sacks in this game. He is on a crazy run right now of getting sacks. Again, like Jay says, against bad football teams. Have to give credit to that idea, because Myles Garrett does know how to take advantage of a bad offensive line and go out there and get a bunch of sacks all at once and then not show up in a game that actually matters against good competition. But he does his thing. Lamar Jackson did not play good at all. I think this is the first time in his career that he had a game in the NFL where he had 2 picks and no touchdown passes. Absolutely insane. Lamar just did not play well at all. Again, the Browns defense has been very feisty all year long, and heck, getting sacked 4 times by Myles Garrett is not going to help how you play in a football game, obviously, if you're Lamar Jackson. But he went 14 of 25, 193 yards and 2 picks. Did not play great. Derrick Henry played fine. He had 18 carries, 103 yards and a touchdown. Zay Flowers had 3 catches, 78 yards. The Ravens were able to get out of this game with a win. It did not make me feel more confident about what the Ravens are as a football team, but guess what? They don't need to do so. That's not their prerogative. Their prerogative is to make up these games that they're behind Pittsburgh 1 game at a time. I think they're only 1 game behind Pittsburgh as of right now. And they still have to play Pittsburgh twice this season. So as long as they keep winning football games and the Steelers either fall on their face or if Baltimore beats them in both the matchups that they have left against each other, that's all that matters. And if once they get to the playoffs, they can be playing their best ball, they'll be back to having a chance to do what they've been doing over the last few years, is just being one of the better teams in the AFC and having a chance to get to the Super Bowl. Especially with Kansas City looking as down as they are right now, that's what Baltimore is fiending for right now, is be able to get into the playoffs and maybe Kansas City not be there at all because of how not great Kansas City has been throughout this year so far. So Baltimore got another win. They stay a game behind Pittsburgh, and that's it. All they need to do is keep winning football games. And style points don't matter at this point. That's exactly what they're doing. Next game, Kansas City going to Denver. They lost the game. Kansas City lost the game 22-19 to Denver. Denver was the better football team, man. There was plenty of opportunities for Kansas City to come back and win this football game. The pick 6 that Mahomes threw was not good. I think it was a pick 6, right? Play-by-play. Make sure I have it right. Let's see here. Travis Kelce, punt. Incompletion. Yeah, it was like the one. Yeah, it was like the pick that Patrick Mahomes threw was a bad pick, and that took away a chance for them to get points on the board. It was 6-6 at the time. That was a bad pick that Patrick Mahomes threw. It wasn't a pick six, but it was a very bad interception at a bad time. Kansas City had plenty of opportunities to go out there and win this football game, but they weren't the better team. Bo Nix played better on that day. I think Bo Nix, 24 of 37, 295 yards, no touchdown passes, but no picks either. Patrick Mahomes, 29 of 45, 276, one touchdown, one pick. Again, that pick happening at a very bad time. Neither team really ran the football all that well. That's just kind of what they've been throughout this year. Kansas City hasn't ran the football well all year, and neither really has Denver. Kelce had a really kind of like a vintage Kelce performance. Nine catches, 91 yards, and a touchdown. And then you have Troy Franklin for the Broncos, 4 catches, 84 yards. Pat Bryant, 5 catches, 82 yards. Cortland Sutton had 4 catches, 59. Evan Ingram came out and had 4 catches for 60 yards. So it was just two teams going back and forth. I think this Denver defense is absolutely legit. And they made life very hard on Patrick Mahomes. He wasn't comfortable, made that one big mistake. But it's just Denver went out there and made enough plays to win, while Kansas City kind of came up short. And Kansas City being at 5-5, they're not in a good spot. They have no chance to really win that division now. And I think Kansas City's only chance to make the playoffs is to try to make the wild card, but it's just they're so far behind when it comes to wins that they're going to need a lot of teams in front of them to kind of like fall in their faces, and they're going to have to win some games that they probably aren't good enough to win right now. But it's just, having a potential playoffs where the Kansas City's not playing, I'm not going to sit here and complain about, because I have been what is like a lot of NFL fans, there is a little bit of Kansas City fatigue. So the idea that you can have a whole playoff run without Kansas City being involved and have a chance for them to get to the Super Bowl again, it'd be a very big breath of fresh air to be able to not have to see Kansas City going out there and having a chance to win another Super Bowl. So I'm not mad about Kansas City not looking great. It's, if anything, it just kind of makes Kansas City look like, like a normal football team like everybody else, rather than looking like they're the next Patriots. So I was happy to see Denver win this game for sure. Sunday night game, Detroit going to Philadelphia. Philly won the game 16-9. Let me make this as clear as I can. Okay? Detroit side first. Offense was not good. Jared Goff was not comfortable at all in this football game. And that was due to the fact that defensive line for the Eagles is back. That Eagles defensive line was the reason that they were able to go on the playoff run that they had last year, and why they eventually won a Super Bowl. And then starting off this year, defensive line wasn't great. They weren't playing all that well, but they're getting better throughout the year. And then their GM went out there, Howie Roseman went out there and made a big move to get Jalen Phillips, the defensive end from Miami. And he has been on this team for a couple games now, and he has been an absolute game changer for this Eagles defense. And that defensive line is scary again. So big credits to Philadelphia. That defensive line is absolutely insane now. They're back to being insane again. And even though their offense has been struggling out the wazoo, they have not been good. Jalen Hurts has been 135 yards in this game, 14 of 28. They ran the football a little bit better. Saquon had 83 yards rushing off of 26 carries. A.J. Brown had 50 yards total receiving. I think Devontae Smith only had like a couple catches in this game. The offense for Philadelphia was not good at all in this game. They weren't. But that Philadelphia defense is game wreckers, dude. Like, they're back to being a game wrecker again. And as long as the offense can get back to playing normal football, I think they're going to be a very hard team to stop throughout the rest of the season. They really are. But again, the problem is that what has shown anybody off, like, what has this offense shown anybody to make anybody believe that their offense is going to get their shit together by the time the games really matter? I just don't have any confidence in that. But I don't know. And even still, even with everything going Philadelphia's way, Detroit had plenty of opportunities to come back and win. But it's just there was just so much pressure, and Jared Goff did not feel comfortable in all this football game. And as much as I gave Detroit credit for Dan Campbell kind of coming out and started calling plays last week for them last week, and they played great. I think it was against Washington, right? Yeah, they came out and he called a good game against them. But again, I heard somebody compare it to playing a game of Madden, but having the computer difficulty set down to rookie, and then he goes against a much better defense, and it does not look all that great. The play calling doesn't look awesome. They go for it on fourth down a bunch of times. I think they went 1 of 13 on fourth down in this game. So they weren't converting at all in this game. So the Lions have some real issue. Again, the Lions will go back to scoring 30 points a game against everybody else, but the problem is that once they get to the playoffs and they face off against some of these better defensive lines and Jared Goff's going to not feel comfortable again, will they have some actual answers? And I just doubt they will, even though the defense for the Lions played better. And that pass interference call that Philadelphia got against Detroit at the end of that game was absolute dog crap. There was no reason that should have been defensive pass interference. And that essentially let the Eagles kind of take the game over. They let the Eagles take the ball and keep it for pretty much the rest of the game and not have to give the ball back to the Lions. If they would have not, that call wouldn't have been made. The Lions would have gotten the ball back with a little less than 2 minutes left to have a chance to go win it. But again, with how good that Eagles defense was, I didn't have any confidence that the Lions were even going to be able to take advantage of that moment, even if they had it. So, but again, that call was trash. That pass interference sucked. That was not a pass interference whatsoever. But that Philly defensive line, though, they're back to being game wreckers, dude. And it's just if they keep playing like that, there is not a team out there that should feel confident that they can beat the Eagles, even with the Eagles offense playing like trash. Last but not least, this is the Monday night game last night. Dallas going to Vegas. Dallas won the game 33-16. This game was not close. I do have to give credit to George Pickens. He had an awesome game. He had 9 catches, 144 yards, and a touchdown. They ran the football decently well. You had Javonte Williams, 22 carries, 93 yards. I think they had over 100 yards rushing in this game. But like I said, George Pickens, awesome. 9 catches, 144 yards and a touchdown. CeeDee Lamb, 5 catches, 66 yards and a touchdown. Jake Ferguson also had a touchdown. And for the Raiders, man, it didn't matter defensively for the Cowboys because the Raiders are so bad offensively. Geno Smith, 27-42 for 238 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 pick. They just weren't able to get anything going offensively at all in this game. If it wasn't Brock Bowers focused, they weren't doing shit in this football game. Before I keep going to the Raiders, Dak Prescott, 25-33, 268, 4 touchdowns, 0 picks. Dak was awesome. Like I said, even though the Dallas is not a great football team, if their offense can kind of get going, they're a very hard team to stop, and the Raiders had no chance of stopping this Dallas offense at all in this game. But back to the Raiders. Geno did not play great, and if he wasn't throwing that ball to Brock Bowers, they really weren't doing anything at all in this football game. They ran the football for 27 yards total in this game. Ashton Genty, 6 carries, 7 yards. They just could not get any type of running game going whatsoever in this game. Brock Bowers, 7 catches, 72 yards. Trey Tucker had a touchdown catch, 4 catches, 47 yards. But it's just this Raiders team, one of the worst in the NFL. And if Dallas can kind of get their offense going like this, they're just a very hard team to stop. And the Raiders had no opportunity to get that job done there last night. So Raiders is not a good football team. Dallas is a lot better. And Dallas did what they had to do. So all the credit to them on that. And that's about it for all the games from last week. Story-wise, anything else I didn't talk about? I talked about the Rodgers thing. CJ Stroud's still in concussion protocol. He'll be out for this Thursday night against the Bills. Oh, Thursday night. So we won't be recording again until Friday after this Thursday night game has been played. So I got the picks for me and Jace for this upcoming Thursday night game. Buffalo at Houston. Me and Jace both picked Buffalo to win this game. I just think that Buffalo is going to be able to do enough. Again, they're not going to. This might be like a 12-7 football game, but I think Buffalo might be able to do enough to win this football game with Josh Allen at the helm. And I just think Houston offensively is just not consistent enough for me to pick them to beat Buffalo. And as to records, currently I went 9-6 last week. Jace went 8-7 last week. And then overall, I am 94-55-1. And Jace is 97-52-1. So he's 3 games ahead of me. And that's it on the picks. Story-wise, I talked about CJ. Let's see here. Anything else I had to see? Talked about Jamar Chase. No, and that's it. That's all I got. So, talked about all the games. Talked about the stories as I went along. Made our pick for the Thursday night game. Talked about the college football stuff, all the games this past weekend, and the playoff rankings. And that's about it. So, it's been about 2 hours now. And let's go to end the podcast before I go any longer. So, if you've been listening for a while, we appreciate you. If you're just now joining on, hopefully you like us and enjoy us enough to join us on this ride of talking about sports in the dumbest way possible. And if this is the first pod you've listened to, hopefully you can go back and listen to a different pod with both me and Jace on, so you get a better idea of what this podcast is at its best when me and Jace are here talking like brothers, talking sports, talking shit to each other and all of that. And if you decide you want to join us on this ride, if you could do a couple things for us, we'd appreciate if you could like our podcast, subscribe to the podcast, rate the podcast 5 stars wherever you listen to us. We're pretty much available on all audio platforms out there. Make sure you do that. Share us, friends, family, enemies, anybody you feel like could enjoy the podcast we put out on a weekly basis, a couple times a week during football season. We would love if you could do that. And then last but not least, if you could follow us on Twitter and or X, whatever you'd like to call it, at JB Sports Pod is the podcast handle, at Javante Boozer is my handle, and at Jace Boozer 1 is Jace's. And that's about it. So let's finish off the pod. So have a great day. Have a great night. Thank you guys for always listening. And that's about it. So we will see you guys in a couple days. Bye, y'all.